everybody look them over? Or remember them?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
The motion has been made and accepted to approve the minutes from the last meeting. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We'll move to the financial report.
You have the profit and loss statement for January in front of you. So just to go through those, under income, we have interest income for loans out of our unrestricted fund, $478 and $17.57. Interest income out of our RBEG fund of $69.47, $771, $54.64, $775, $71.83, $128, $80 and $38. Interest income for our startup Kansas loans of $90.85, $42.96, and $124. And then we also had transfers out of that to Network Kansas of $90.85 and $42.96. Interest income off of bank accounts, 41 cents, 20.83, 27 cents, 68 cents, 54.55, and 104.95. And then our loan processing fees, we have 3 of those at $25 each. And then we have an over deposit of $641. In terms of program income, we had, this is for registration fees for the Think Like an Entrepreneur Ice House class. One deposit at $125, another one at $525, another one at $100, and another one at $425. Under expenses, we had an interest expense of $101.14. Under operations for advertising, $75, and I believe that was an ad in the Sentinel for our daycare meeting that we had last month. Under phone, we had one for $51.70 and one for $43.71. We did not have a phone bill in our last month's monthly report, so that's why we've got that this month. We had our workman's comp insurance for $250. On your payroll, we had, I think that's the direct deposit fee of $350. Kelly Larson paycheck $48.63.33, and Chris Heinze $419. FICA expense for Kelly Larson $276.73, and for Chris Heinze $22.88. Medicare expense for Kelly Larson $64.72, and for Chris Heinze $535. Dues. This is actually the Lincoln News subscription of $38. And then under leadership class expenses, to Main Street Coffee of $77.09. That was for our January lunch for the leadership class. And I think that's all for the income and expenses. Any questions on that?
No questions, no discussion. Move on, I guess. We'll follow that subject to audit. She want to go now, or she?
It's up to you
Yeah,
guys.
no, I think that's fine.
That it, or I can go.
Yeah, no, I got lots to talk about.
Okay. Get out of your hair.
You can listen to it or not.
He wants one of these or one of these, but see, the most important part is cookies. So Michael's looking good at cookie. He's not here to listen to the spiel. So In the interest of transparency, my name is LaDonna Reiner, and I am the vice chair of the Post Rock Community Foundation. It has nothing to do with my job at the health department. It's completely separate. I'm not paid to be here right now by the county, and it's just a volunteer thing that I do outside of my job. So it has nothing to do with my county position that I'm here for. I don't know how many of you know much about the Community Foundation. February is our match month, and what that means is any donation to the foundation in February is matched 150% by the D.G. Hansen Foundation. So I'm not here to ask, obviously, your board for donations. We're trying to get the word out with as many community clubs as we can get to of what the Community Foundation does, because we meet a lot of people who still have no idea that we have a Community Foundation and what it does. It started as the Sylvan Grove Area Fund, and probably about 10 years ago, they decided to take that fund and put it in as an affiliate of the Greater Salina Community Foundation, which just means they do the business end of the Community Foundation. They do the investing through a marketing firm, and it is a true community foundation.
People of the community.
Nonprofits can set up a fund in there that's their fund, and they just use the interest off of it, and then it's invested in multiple low, medium, and high risk funds. So there is some risk that you may lose some money if you don't you have to ride the markets out. I don't know a lot about, I don't invest a lot of money in the markets, so I don't know that, but if you can ride it out, usually you get a better return, and they have, like if a church invested and made a fund for their church, they could spend a certain percent of the interest, but the principal would stay in there forever, so they'd always have something to draw back on, instead of just spending the money they have and then it's gone once it's spent. So the funds that we have in the foundation right now are there's one for, I don't have it in this list, but they're in the information. Garden of Eden, there's a woman who left a bunch of money to Garden of Eden, put it in a fund. They can spend the interest into forever to upgrade the Garden of Eden. The Lucas Theater has a fund. The Lincoln Historical Society has a fund. Their scholarship funds for Lucas and Lincoln have a scholarship fund in there too. So there's a bunch of different ways you can set up a fund for a nonprofit. Say when you pass away, you want to give 30% of your money you have left after you die. Estate. Yes, got to get that word out. It was sitting by you.
Sorry. Sometimes the chemo brain just overflows and goes out.
Say you want to leave 30% of your estate to your church. You could set it up in a fund where they could just draw off the interest and spend it that way, and that money would stay in there forever to leave a legacy. We take donations of all kinds. We take donations of grain, cattle, those kind of things. If you wanted to donate a cow, you would donate it before you sell it at the sale barn. The sale barns have around the area have that set up. You would donate it before you sell it to the community foundation. That way you get the expense, but you didn't make any money off of it, and then we sell the cow through the sale barn. So you get the expense, but you could donate it, versus you're going to sell this cow and then give the money to the foundation or to the Boy Scouts or whatever. So the community foundation now encompasses all of Lincoln County, and it's 298 and 299 school districts. So initially it was Hunter was the only out-of-county town, but when the school districts combined, Lucas and Luray are also now part of our foundation. So we do 2 grant cycles a year. We do it in the fall and in the spring, where people that are nonprofits, you don't necessarily have to be a 501c3. You just have to be a nonprofit. It's just in how the reporting happens. They can apply to us for grant funds, and there's a lot of different stipulations on what they can apply for, but community beautification, health, if you're a nonprofit business, we can do some things like that. It can't be a business that's a profit business, but a nonprofit could do that. We've given money to the Sylvan School, the Lincoln School, Denmark Hall got a big chunk, the Vesper Community Center, the city, Sylvan Fire, the city's gotten some, the fairgrounds, Beverly's gotten some. It's just we've given quite a bit. Haven't given anything over in the Westfall area because nobody's applied, but we could. Like your community center, somebody could apply for funds to help with electricity and things like that. Our own funds are pretty small right now, so we only grant out about $7,000 or $8,000 a year. But Dane G. Hansen has been very nice in giving every county $100,000 a year to grant out from the community foundation. So in those funds, only Lincoln County 501c3s and nonprofits can apply for those funds. So Lucas and Lorraine Hunter cannot apply for that $100,000 grants. They have to apply to Russell County or Mitchell County because they have foundations too. So when we're doing our match month, we're trying to raise funds for our funds that are unrestricted, that can be used for anything. Because the Dane G. Hansen, there are some restrictions in community beautification, like I said, health, some other things. So, and we're just trying to get the word out that we have a community foundation and what we do, not asking for money, but if there's somebody you know that's thinking about donating money or next year even, we usually do the match in February, but it's all tax deductible. So depending on what your tax bracket is, you get a receipt from the foundation and you can use that for your taxes. But just kind of trying to get out in the community and to share around that we are having a match month. And the new grant cycle opens in March and it closes May 1st. So March 1st to May 1st it'll be open. You have to apply online. Generally we have about $200,000 to $300,000 worth of grant applications, and we have $50,000 to $60,000 to grant out. So we have a lot more applications than we have money for, but it shows the need is there to have some kind of legislation to help the community. So, any questions about that?
The 50 to 60,000, is that for Lincoln County?
Lincoln County, like one of the last grant cycles. Denmark got $25,000. Vesper Community Center got $25,000 for electrical upgrades and things like that. And I'm not sure exactly what Denmark Hall used theirs for.
New siding.
The Fair Board's got quite a bit.
But it has to be for a nonprofit.
Has to be for a nonprofit. It can't be for
city, right?
For city. Yeah, it can be.
Could be for the city.
Yes, the cities can apply. The county can apply. Like the health department could apply. I can't review applications that obviously that I write. That's a conflict of interest. So
if you apply between March and May, when do you know?
Usually we meet the third Monday of the month, so it would be towards the end of May that you would know. Mm-hmm. So the schools have gotten money for playground equipment and IT stuff and things like that. And we always say, if you get turned down, keep applying because we always get more money asked for than we have. So keep applying. It doesn't mean that your project is any worse. We try to spread it around the communities, but that's not necessarily we haven't given anything to Westfall, so absolutely we're going to pick Westfall. That's not true. The packets of information have a list of the board members, some brochure about Match Month, little magnet on there with our website.
I don't need one. I've heard not your spiel, but
Yeah.
I've been to 2 other meetings where I've heard this already, so.
I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Anyway, it tells a little bit about the things that we've given money to in the past. But on the application, there's always a box that says, will you take any less money? Well, if you're asking for $75,000 and you won't take any less money, we're not, and it happens a lot. You'd be surprised. It's like we have $62,000 to give. I can't give you 75, and if you check the box that says no, I won't take any less,
You're out.
you're out before we even get started in the conversation. So those are some things to think about. Generally, it doesn't pay for food. If you're going to have some kind of event, generally it won't pay for food. Volunteerism is a huge thing we look at. Do you have volunteers? Say you're going to, like the bathroom at the fairgrounds. They have lots of volunteer labor to help put it up, just needed money to help pay for things for it. So that kind of thing. So they look at volunteerism, and if you've gotten any money from anywhere else, say you've gotten $1,000 and from another source, or you've raised $1,000 and you need $1,000 to go in on the project. We look at that to see how much you're trying to help yourselves versus just a handout. So there's all kinds of things that we rank them on. So John Betts, it's in the packet who's on the board, but for Lincoln itself, it's myself, John Betts, and Joe Biggs are on the board that represent kind of Sylvan East, Barnard, Beverly, Westfall. So these are our annual reports. If anybody's interested in the actual how much money's in the fund, how that works. I don't know a lot about investing in the markets, but this year has not been extremely. Just kidding. What you want?
You say you were good.
Yeah, I have one.
Okay. The last quarter has not been extremely good for a few. So they always explain to us when we go to trainings, you have to ride the wave with the markets. If you get out every time it's bad and then get back in when it's good, you're just hurting yourself. You kind of have to ride the wave. So the first quarter of this year has been good, but the last couple quarters were not so good. So that's kind of how the funds roll. Any other questions anybody has?
I just, I guess in terms of donations, I sat in on, or went to a dinner where you had Betsy Waring with the Dane Hansen Foundation giving a presentation in terms of the long-term transfer of wealth that happens in this community. And if we could, over the next 30 to 40 years, it's unbelievable the amount of wealth that will transfer from one generation to the next. And the scary part is that a lot of that generation is not here in Lincoln County. So there's the potential to just lose a lot of that money going elsewhere. And I guess one thing from a community foundation's perspective is if we could just figure out a way to capture 5% of that in the community foundation, what that does in the long term to the amount of grants that can be put back into the community for all these projects. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, I think Betsy said, and it just really struck me, give 95% of what you have to your kids, but give 5%, if you just give 5% of that back to the community that helped you raise those kids, it's really astounding what.
That was last year.
Yeah, I think so. And so it's just something that I feel like we all need to think about this long term, not just what happens today, but if we could just figure out a way to talk to everybody and say, can you just put 5% of your estate towards the community foundation? Your kids probably aren't going to miss 5%. So 30%, yeah, they might start to balk at that a little bit, but 5% to go to stay in the place that helped you raise them, it's really shocking.
Yeah. The Greater Salina Community Foundation is part of the, I think it's 1% that we pay to them to be administrative. But they also have lawyers and financial people. So if I had an estate and I wanted to set up part of my estate to go to the community foundation, they have people that you could sit down with for free to talk to about how you might want to set up your estate and things like that. They have the resources and they have the expertise, and that's the benefit of going with them as an affiliate, because we couldn't hire somebody to invest our money, let alone do it, be able to afford to hire lawyers and things like that. So none of the money that is donated to Lincoln County Community Foundation goes to Salina, only that 1% for administrative. So, and they give us administrative funds back. So we get our funds back in a lot of different ways. So, but a lot of people were concerned about that. If I donate, Salina's going to spend all my money. No, that's not true. It stays within the community. So, and we can connect you with that. And February, if you know anybody who wants to make the donation, $10,000 is the max. I'll throw that out there. Turns into $25,000. If anybody's got that in their pocket, they'd like to give us, we'll take it, but I'm just kidding. But the end of February, so maybe checks would have to be mailed or given to myself by the end of the month, with the postmark at the end of the month if they were mailed, and there's address and things in there. So, but if you know somebody who's interested in the Community Foundation, please let us know, and we can talk to them more about it. We're always looking for board members. We have one open spot right now. John is new, John Betts, but we have not filled. Jennifer O'Hare went off the board, so we have one open spot kind of for Lincoln, Westfall kind of area. If you're interested in community foundations or interested in being on the board, be sure to talk to one of us also about that. Any more questions? Nope. I'll let you get your name. Please enjoy the cookies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me come. Take up some of your time.
Marketing coordinator report.
So the big thing that we worked on this past month, and all of you might have seen the email. So one problem that I've had is, my contact list it's kind of a disaster. So when I try and, there's something that I feel like I need to really send out a message to a broader community, it's just kind of a challenge for me. And so the idea is that if we use this online email service, it helps to organize your contacts. It's a better way to send things out. With my just Outlook email right now, if I send more than 300 emails a day, then they count me as spam, and they actually block me from sending emails. So the email list was 500, so that was another kind of confusing thing where I had to stagger the messages that I sent out so that I can, after I send out this one mass email, I can still respond to somebody else and say, thank you for sending me information or whatever. Chris has helped me set up MailChimp is the email program that we're using. And it's also a way that people can kind of decide if they want to get information from me or not, and what kind of information. We've set up 3 different kinds of lists, where there's an economic development group of people we can send out. And so that would be things like if I get information on it, grants or loans or something typically targeted towards business owners or entrepreneurs or something like that. There's another group where if you're just interested in community information. So this would be like if I need to send out a message about the strategic doing workshop or a big community strategic planning session or something like that, or just important information, it can go out to that group. And then I've also, over the last year, had a request from people to be on notification of our meetings, since they're public meetings. And so this is kind of a way I figured it will be an easier way for me. If people want to sign up to get notifications of our meetings, they can do that on their own. If people want to unsubscribe because they're bored with it, they can do that. But it's kind of a better way, I guess, for me to be able to send out public notices to the people who want to get public notices. And then also they can decide whether they can subscribe, they can unsubscribe, and it's just kind of an easier way for me to manage all that. So that was kind of her primary project, is getting all that set up for me. Last week we kind of launched all that, and we're also able to see stats, like, so how many people actually opened the email, how many people unsubscribed, how many bad emails were there that maybe bounced, and so we've got a problem there. And then you can see how many people start to subscribe. So she's going to work on having a link on the website where people can go, and if they want to start receiving emails, they can put themselves into this list. We're going to do a Facebook post about it and so forth. So it's kind of just a better way to manage how I send out large communications, I guess you could say. So that's been the primary thing that we've worked on this past month. We're also trying to be a little more proactive in terms of posting jobs on Facebook. It has been where, every few months or so we would post a job on Facebook saying, hey, there's jobs in Lincoln County, go here, but we're going to try and do more of an individual basis. So here's a specific job and so forth, just to try and get the more word out there about job postings, that there are jobs in Lincoln County. Table tents, March 1st is kind of our goal for getting the spring round of table tents out on all the restaurant tables. So she's going to be working on that this month. She also put here some of our stats for Facebook in terms of the past month, how many people we've reached, and what our engagement is, and breakdown of in terms of women versus men there. So we're trying to track that a little better, and I guess come up with, see if there's any thing we should be doing to improve on that. So those have kind of been the primary things that we are talking about right now, that she has done the past month and that we're talking about. I guess I will mention it now in terms of marketing stuff. The chamber, with the partnership that we had a lot of conversation about last month, that's kind of on hold for a little bit. There was the IRS, they do need to refile with the IRS, so they're going to have to reapply, I guess. So we're kind of going to be on hold in terms of being able to hire for a sheriff position on that until they figure that out. We don't know whether that's 1 month, 1 week, 6 months. So I have a feeling what the chamber is probably going to need to do, and I totally understand that they might just need to hire somebody here. And when they hire somebody, they say, listen, this is just a temporary thing. It's to hold us over. It's to get us through a point when we are ready and able to do this partnership with economic development. So that's kind of the status of that, and I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I was going to talk about it. Any questions on parking report and stuff? So for direct reports, organizational updates, last month we talked about bylaws and our district boundaries for each of you and conflict of interest policy. So last month, according to our bylaws, you need to have the bylaws in front of you, I think, for 7 days or something like that, and you didn't have that. So last month I just kind of wanted to start the conversation and see what you guys think about some ideas. But this month, I guess I'm hoping for approval, or if you don't, don't approve, then I think we need to hold off for a couple months because after this, our election process needs to start. But some of this stuff impacts that. So if we approve it this month, then I know what we need to do in terms of our election process for board members. But if we still have questions, concerns, or anything like that, then I'll probably ask that we just hold off for a couple months so that we can just go through our typical process that we have for elections and not cause any confusion there. So what you've got in your packet is the draft edits to our bylaws. Essentially, this mostly just deals with our election process. Major changes would be, instead of having our own registration process where our office kind of maintains a list of who's registered to vote with us with their addresses, we just use the county courthouse's list of registered voters.
So that's his number 2 or section 2, right?
Yeah, Article 2, Section 2 voting numbers, yeah. So that just basically says, instead of taking out where, you can be 16 years or older, you can be a business, you can be, I can't remember what else is on there. It's just you're registered. If you're registered to vote with the county, then you're registered to vote with economic development. The pros to that is it's just going to be a lot easier to administer. Because right now, if somebody moves from one township to another township, I don't necessarily know that. They're not going to come to my office and say that. So it's hard for me to track if somebody moves out of the county or somebody moves into the county. It's hard to manage that list. And it's also hard for people to know that I have to register with economic development before I can vote for economic development. It doesn't count whether you're registered to vote that way. The cons to doing this is that it does eliminate a few people who could vote right now. So right now, if you're 16 years of age, you can vote for economic development, but you're not a registered voter upstairs. And then also we had a business could be its own registered member with economic development. So if we go to the county's list, a business can't just vote. So for like Lincoln Farms, like Craig could vote because he's a resident of Lincoln, but he could also vote if Lincoln Farm Supply says that he's their representative to economic development and can vote as their proxy, so to speak. So that would go away. And the other thing that would go away is people who do not live in the county but have a business in the county, they could vote as it stands right now. But if we change it, then they would not be able to vote because they don't live in the county, so they're not a registered member. An example of that would be Marilyn Helmer. She lives in Tuscott, so she's not a registered voter for Lincoln County, but she does have a business here. So that is a con for this. The one thing I would say with all those cons is that the reality is none of those people actually vote. So I think we have a long history here of, even though we've set up the bylaws to allow that to happen, the reality is that nobody actually does. So by changing it to be an easier process and just going off of the county's voter list, I think it's going to be a much simpler process. I think we can actually do a better job of getting more people to vote because it's not confusing. It's just a lot easier process. So that's kind of one of the primary changes in the bylaws. Let's see.
But we would still vote in March.
Yes, yeah, the timing wouldn't change on that.
Your special meeting, you got something struck in there.
Let's see what page
Second page.
I think if anything I changed is just kind of to remove the references to having proxies and stuff like that, which would go away with this kind of the change to how we do it. So that's what most of these changes are. Down in section 7 on page 2, There should be no fewer than 3, no more than 11 such districts. And actually, Tim,
Page 4.
oh, okay, that's coming up.
Section 2, qualifications, terms and numbers.
Yeah. So there should be a change there that says, right now it says 1 trustee shall be elected from each district in Lincoln County for a 3-year term. And I'll get to the district changes, but it should read 2 trustees shall be elected from each district for a 3-year term, plus 1 board member who is at large countywide. And I will explain that here in a second. Another change that I made after a discussion last week, or after a board meeting, Mona Gersman had a couple questions about the bylaws and being a public entity and so forth. And so I got some feedback from David Gersman, and overall he thought that looked really good. He did say a couple things in terms of if we are to change our bylaws, that we at least put a public notice in the newspaper, which it's not in our newspaper, or it's not in our bylaws, but I went ahead and put an ad in last week's paper just to let people know we are looking at changing our bylaws. But the suggestion was to go ahead and put that in your bylaws, so therefore you can't just secretly change them. So I think that was added on page 3 under Article 3, Section 1. That we would make notification of that. And I think that makes sense, so I don't see any problem with that. Those were the bigger items, and like I said, I think we talked about all this stuff last month too. For the district boundaries, if you kind of go after the bylaws, you'll see where our current districts are. We have 7 districts and 1 board member from each district. Last month what we talked about is changing over to mirror what the county commissioner districts are. So we would have 3 districts, and again the idea of having 2 people from each district and then 1 at large. And so on the next page there, I kind of divided out what that would look like, and potentially what the terms would be. For the most part, we don't have an issue. It actually works out pretty well that we really do only have 2 members in each district. District number 1, we have 3. So the idea is we can make one of those people the at-large person. Down here, and I don't care who's at-large, who's representing the District 1 or not. We do have one problem, though, in that it just so happens all 3 of those people's terms expire at the same time next year. So it's not an issue for the at-large person, because that person's going to potentially bounce around, all over the county. But whoever is limited to representing that District 1, I would like to change at least one of those terms. We could bump that back so that instead of 2020, it's pushed back to 2021. I suppose if somebody really wants an out this year, we could push it up to 2019. But that way we don't have one district that is fully open at one time. There's always a stagger. And again, I don't really care I mean, the people affected is Craig, Wendell, and Chad. You're all in that area, number 1. So if you guys want to fight over who represents District 1 and who gets to be the at-large person, that's fine. And then whoever's in District 1, you guys can fight over whose terms expire at the same time or who gets to be potentially pushed back one more year. But that's the thought with the district changes there. And the reason for doing that is right now, when we have one person representing a small area, when we have an opening or vacancy, we can only pull somebody from that limited area. And so that can be a little bit difficult trying to find somebody who has the time, who has the interest to fill that spot. This would open it up a lot more, where we could still make sure we have cross-county representation, but our pool, every time we have an opening, is going to be a little bit more flexible, I guess you could say, which I think will help us out in the long term. So any questions on the bylaws? Are you guys okay with this? Any issues, concerns? I think Tim is correct in terms of there should be that one change on page 4, section 2. That it should read 2 trustees shall be elected from each district. With their 3-year term and an at-large person.
So in March, when it comes around to election time, will you produce from the clerk a copy of everybody in Tim's district, Barb's district, and mail them a notification, or are you going to use the Lincoln Sentinel?
I think we would go ahead and still use the Lincoln Sentinel. The concern with taking their list and then mailing stuff for since we're not technically a county government, I don't know if we really are supposed to use their list for a mailing, because then we could start to abuse it and hey, now we're going to just start sending postcards, and now we're going to start sending this and that. So there's a little bit of a problem in terms of what we can use that list for mailings, because we're not a county department. So my mind, at least for now, as we continue to put an ad in the newspaper, having the MailChimp list, I can do a better job of actually communicating to people, saying, hey, it's time to vote, or, we're accepting nominations, we're accepting votes this week, so forth. I think it's going to be easier, because right now, I've always hesitated advertising. I mean, we've always put an ad in the paper, but it's been hard to promote people to vote, because they might not be registered to vote with us, so I can only tell the people who are on our registered list to vote, and I don't have necessarily their email addresses, or sometimes I don't, I've never met them before, I don't know who they are. So
And we don't know, some of them have died.
Yeah, and
We
some of
talked
them,
about that last time.
and maybe
If they've moved from
Right.
one place to another, and they didn't come and
Right.
change, so it's.
Well, that can still happen with this new thing. If somebody moves out of Elkhorn and moves to Hanover,
but at
With the
least
voter
they'll have,
registration, they're
yeah,
gonna
they'll
know.
have it, they'll catch it
Yeah.
upstairs.
yeah.
So when they come in to vote, put their vote in your box. Do you
You're gonna
go
check that
pull
out?
all the votes out, and then you have to go upstairs and check
Well,
before
so
you
what
can count the votes?
So what I'm thinking is, we have a cutoff time period, and so let's say the week before voting starts, I can go up to Dawn, I can say, Dawn, print me a list of all registered voters for district number 1, and she can print that off, and then when they come in the office to vote, I can just
Just like they do.
so, okay,
Yeah.
Craig came in to vote,
Get your ID out.
Yeah.
You know, or if somebody else comes in to vote, I can say, you're not on this list, you know, because you're actually in whatever township and not here, so that would be how I would be able to monitor, I guess, and make sure that those people vote. So there would be a clear list in terms of who can vote.
So to determine who's a member at large, I think we need to get 20 sticks of spaghetti.
No, it's already been determined. She printed it out. This is gospel.
I was like, so how do I justify this? And right now it's alphabetical. So the two S's were in District 1 and the W got large. So that was the logic there.
So much tower spaghetti.
Chad doesn't know what you're talking about. Chad and Wendell were part of that pre-board meeting discussion.
I can see where that's going to come
Entrepreneurial.
into use at some time in my future.
I want to find out something after making a velvet tower spaghetti.
Well, you'll still
So,
have.
I mean,
You'll,
one is,
you'll still have a little problem, a chain of problems. If Chad's here at large, and you have Wendell and Craig in the same district going out there at the time, but it's not a big problem.
No, I mean, I suppose we could leave it that way. It just seems like it would be better to stagger it. Because what happens if both Craig and Wendell right now decide they're not going to renew their terms? Well, now we've got to find two people within that area. So if we only can kind of limit it to potentially having one opening a time in an area, I think it's just
But
it's just
we're
better
having
to be
so much
staggered.
fun. I don't really want to get off.
So do you need a motion to approve this?
I guess.
March is only
Well,
so many days away.
so actually, nominations are due March 13th. So I'm thinking I would probably put an ad in the newspaper either next week or that week after that to let people know, these positions are open if you're interested in nominating. The positions that are open are Tim's and Rhonda's. So to let people first know, there's always been two ads. The first ad has always been, we're accepting nominations. Here's what you need. Here's the whole process for registering to vote, blah, blah, blah. And then the second ad is always, I think, the week of voting to inform people that it's now time to vote.
Did you have to post the notification of the change in the bylaws? Is it like 3 times in the paper or?
No, it's,
yes, we just had.
yeah, I didn't even have
before,
to,
but
yeah, I didn't even have to do that. I just thought, well, I will because the suggestion was to put that in our bylaws. But the suggestion here is you just do public notice. It doesn't state how many or anything like that. And we're not bound to, like the city, has to put public notices in every whatever for various different things. Yeah, so just one ad is sufficient.
And
So-
I'm just repeating this. This follows the commissioners. So it's for simplification, so the voters won't need to know, where's my line? Just, it's the same as the commissioners.
Right.
Yeah.
They know where they're at today.
And this will, of course, will start this year.
The one thing that I don't know, and I didn't think to ask about it, but I think this came up last month, is they can redistrict the county commissioner boundaries, I think every 2 years, or every 10 years, when the state, the federal does it.
by population anyway, isn't it?
That's the way this was set up, was
Yeah,
population.
to try and get as close as possible. So I suppose if the county commission ever changes their boundaries, or their territories, then we would need
Follow.
to do the same. But that would only happen once every 10 years.
Actually, the only thing you might add in that is that if they change their boundaries, then
Yeah.
ours would have to too.
The
To
one-
follow the voter.
Yeah. The one thing, it's really not written into the bylaws anywhere how we define our boundaries. It just says, no fewer
Just
than
anybody in
3.
Lincoln County.
Right, so I thought, let's not make it more complicated by actually spelling that out in the bylaws. It's not spelled out now. So, because otherwise every time we have it now, we've got to change our bylaws. Where I think the way it is right now, we could just change our boundaries without having to change the bylaws.
Sounds good to me.
It just so happens that we're talking about it at the same time right now.
So are you gonna roll Chad into a 4th year?
Well, who's ever at large, that term expiration doesn't matter because it'll bounce around everywhere. So I don't think it really matters. We don't need to put that one, I guess. In my terms, if we change anything, it would either need to be the people who represent District 1. So one of them would need to be pushed back or pushed forward.
Chad's still thinking. Chad and Wendell are thinking that. You can tell.
I don't intend on, I haven't been on long enough. I can suck in another 3 years.
If you want to bump one up, bump it up. What do you want to do? Bump one to 19?
We could bump one to 19, we can bump it back to 21. I guess if,
But you were just saying that since I'm at large, mine doesn't really matter. It's basically Craig and Wendell's.
it's Craig and Wendell. So if you guys are okay with you being the at-large, and you guys representing District 1, then
Why don't we bump Wendell to 21 since?
Put Wendell to 28.
You're on the live
so Wendell, would you be okay with your term being
So you're
running a little longer than you originally
you're
intended?
at large. You've been here a year, right?
Well, it says here since 17, but I don't know if I've been on here that long.
Time flies.
Oh, you took who?
I took over for Alfred.
Alfred.
Alfred, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that long.
Just having so much fun.
That's right.
That'd work good to change Wendell to 21, then you have one from each different district that year.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Talk about rewriting districts. You see back east where that one, somehow the congressman can rewrite the districts. So they wanted to keep a Democrat in office. So the district comes down, goes around a certain town, goes back and back up. Because the population of that town always votes Democratic.
There's a name for that.
Yeah, I can't remember that.
Gerrymandering.
Jury, that's it. Yeah.
And
Can't,
I
pretty
didn't
limited
think
how we
you could do
gerrymander.
that. I didn't
That's
think
what
you
they
could
did
do that
in
with
Derby. We had the nightclub down there. They had it done all in the middle of Derby's where they were still the county. They weren't, and everything built up around.
Yeah. Just to know the people in control are so honest.
Yeah. Do you need a motion to accept the bylaws?
Yeah, I guess it'd probably be easiest if we had 2 motions. So one motion to accept
The changing
the
of the
bylaws
proposed
with
bylaws.
with the proposed
And what's the other one?
changes, and then the other one
to accept them.
to
To accept changes of
change the trustee district boundaries from 7 down to 3, and then extend Wendell's term by 1 year.
So you need three,
No.
or you're gonna put those two together? Wendell's term and the boundaries.
Probably, I don't know, two motions.
One to accept the motion, the
The
bylaws
bylaws.
with the
Yeah.
changes, and then, or you want me to do this?
Do one at a time.
That's what I said. Does she want 1, 2, or 3?
I want one on bylaws and one on the,
I so moved to accept the bylaws, the new bylaws as written,
Or as amended.
as amended.
I would second that.
Rhonda made a motion and Wendell made a second to accept the amended proposed bylaws. All in favor, aye. Any opposed?
And then I
That
moved
carries.
to make the boundary, the trustee, what do you want, the trustee, the board, or the trustees' boundaries changed as to fit
Read
proposed
that.
changes, districts for the board of trustees. For the changes and to change, extend
Extend Wendell's.
the at-large position.
No.
Wendell's position.
Yeah.
He's not the at-large.
Oh, I thought you changed it to at-large.
No,
No,
Just-
you
just
didn't.
Extend
Okay.
it
Fine.
by a year.
To extend Wendell's position 1 year till 21.
And to change Chad's to an at-large position.
Oh, and to change, okay, there's where I messed up. And to change Chad's position to an at-large position.
Did we
But
have
we're
an
not
at-large
changing.
position prior?
Yeah.
No.
Well, you didn't.
Oh, that was with regards to changing our business.
right.
I get it.
Yeah.
All right.
If you look at the page before, you'll see everybody had one boundary that didn't that large.
I'll second Rhonda's motion.
Rhonda made a motion to accept the proposed changes for the district of the Board of Trustees and to extend Wendell's position by 1 year to 2021 and to change Chad's position to an at-large position. We had the motion and the second. All in favor for aye. Any opposed? Any other discussion on this? Motion carries.
All right, thank you. And then one more organizational piece. We talked last month about having a conflict of interest policy for all board members and myself. So I had this in front of you last month. We didn't talk about any changes or anything to it, so I didn't make any changes. The idea is just to outline what the procedure is for if there's a conflict of interest and ensuring that we do not operate in a way that there is conflict.
You've done a pretty good job of working
Yeah,
with the conflict, but
Yeah, I'm not proposing this because there's been an issue or I perceive that there might be an issue. It's more just because I think it's good. It's just good for organizations to have a conflict of interest policy.
so you got something for all the board members to sign
Yeah, I do actually.
Need
individually.
a motion?
Yes.
I move that we accept the conflict of interest policy.
Chad made a motion to accept the conflict of interest policy. Craig seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
So if each of you will sign one of those and send it back to me.
Motion carried.
Sorry.
Do I have to do this too?
Yeah, you do. And actually, I'm going to make Chris do one too. She doesn't know that yet. What? I don't know if you got, while I'm thinking about it. do think when in our IRS filings or 990 filings, there's a box that says, does your organization have a conflict of interest policy? And I'm sure that we've always clicked yes, but now we can not have conflict.
Do it with honesty.
Yes, do it with honesty.
Since I would think you put trustee or
Yeah.
whichever position you're holding.
Yeah. The exit officer.
Yeah, we're moving right along now.
Yeah.
Filling pages fast.
Well, that's what you think.
Huh?
That's what you think.
No more thinking for you.
Yeah. All right, where are we here then? So I guess for elections, Tim and Rhonda are up. Nominations will be due for March 13th. Anybody interested in serving on the board, and then voting will be March 20th through the 27th in my office. Thank you. So for the e-community program updates, our Ice House Think Like an Entrepreneur program has begun. We've had 2 classes now. There's 3 more to go. We have 22 people who are participating, which I am thrilled with, because I was really dragging my feet for a long time on even doing this, because I thought it was going to be like pulling teeth to get people to come. So I think it's going pretty well. I did apply to the North Central Regional Planning Commission for some funding to help support the program. Although we do have registration fees coming in, if people attend 4 out of 5 of the classes, then we rebate their registration fee, everything except for $25. So I feel like most of the people in the room are pretty well committed to that, so we're going to have a lot of registration fees go back out. So the cost, there's facilitator's fee, there's the licenses to each participant to participate in this program and get a certification at the end, or certificate. There's food, meals are being provided. So there is some cost associated with this. To cover the cost, Network Kansas is granting us $1,500 to go towards the licenses. We can also use our e-community fund. So for the food and everything like that, nothing actually has to come out of our general fund account. We've got it all covered. But I did apply to the North Central Regional Planning Commission for $1,000 to help fund the program, and they did accept that. So I've got a letter here that basically says if we want their $1,000, which I know we'll probably have lots of discussion on that. If we want it, we need a sign that says, on behalf of Lincoln County Economic Development, we hereby accept the $1,000 investment offered by the North Central Kansas Community Network for the Think Like an Entrepreneur program, and under the terms and conditions listed above, which is basically at the end of the program, I provide proof of what our expenses are and ask for the reimbursement, and that I publicly somewhere I need to acknowledge that we're getting funds, that they're being sponsored, or they're sponsoring our program. So I guess I would like a motion that we accept their funds so that I can have Tim sign it, if you guys want there.
To accept the funds from North Central Kansas Planning or Community. Got it turned down. Network, yeah. For the Think Like an Entrepreneur program.
Second.
Rhonda made a motion to accept $1,000 from the North Central Kansas Community Network for our ice house project, and Craig seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any more discussion? Motion carried.
The other thing, which I think I goofed and I forgot to tell you about, is the facilitator's fee. We have to have a licensed facilitator for this program, and there's not a whole lot of options out there. That's right. So I reached out to two people. One is Brian Richter from Sterling, and Deb Oldie out of Clyde, who used to work for the North Central Regional Planning Commission. They're both certified facilitators for this. Deb had only done this one time before. Her fee was $300 per session plus travel costs, and Brian's was $500 plus travel costs. Since I felt like we're using e-community money, I wanted to go with Brian because he's done this many times before. Since I haven't done it before, I felt like I want to, at least somebody in the room to know what this whole program is. So I went ahead and picked him, and he's done two now, so FYI. So, but his fee is $500 per session plus travel on that. So I just wanted to let you guys know when we get that.
You said he's from Sterling?
Sterling, yeah. And in terms of travel, those Clyde and Sterling are the same distance, so there wasn't really any difference there. But I just wanted to let you guys know on that. I guess any other questions or anything you want to know about the Think Like It Entrepreneur class, other than spaghetti, marshmallow, tape, and yarn?
You had to be there. And Tim got to watch.
Was it tape? Can we go back and watch?
No.
I didn't think about it till the very end of getting the photo, and I think that was when everybody's structures.
That's when the
started
structures
collapsing.
collapsed.
Yeah.
It switched for a second.
Again, the Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge is coming up on March 5th. I am short a few judges for the formal presentation, so I need to find a couple people to do that. I need judges I have judges for the trade show portion, reviewing the business plans, but I'm short a couple judges for the actual presentation. So if anybody is interested in judging or knows somebody who would be good, let me know. It's kind of a fun thing. It's pretty easy. You don't have to really do anything to prepare. It's interesting to see what the kids come up with, and it's a lot of them that having to think on their feet in terms of presenting what their business plan is, and then you get to ask them questions, and you get to see them squirm a little bit, trying to how do we sell this business, or how do we answer the questions about how we came up with our numbers and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun, but I am short a couple judges.
You know the number of entrants expected?
Yeah, we've got, I believe there's 24 businesses total, which is, we've got about 45 kids, I think, that are participating from both Lincoln and Sylvan, which is about what we had last year. And most of them are teaming up in teams of two, so I think there's going to be 24 businesses. And then the really fun part of our meeting, which I emailed you guys about, is Network Kansas' servicing agreement and loan template documents. How many of you read everything that I emailed you last time? You just saw the email, wasn't
I just remember there was a meeting at 9:15 this morning.
So,
So that's how.
a few, this is probably September, I think, of last year. Network Kansas is requiring all e-communities that are using their loan funds to sign a servicing agreement that kind of outlines the relationship between us and them on what we do for these loans, and then also start using their loan template documents. From their perspective, they've got 60 e-communities, and each one of those e-communities are doing loans, so they've just got a lot of stuff to keep track of. So they we want all of our loans to look like this because that makes it easy on them, and I totally understand that. So back in September, I think we talked about this. I had copies for everyone, but Bob hadn't really had a chance to look at it. His first initial look he wasn't really happy about it, but he didn't have a chance to really look at it.
That's because he counted how many pages there was before he
Yes.
started reading.
And I could barely, on some of these things, I can hardly get past the first paragraph before, trying to understand it. So, the deal is that this is required. If we are going to provide or be the conduit for e-community loans, we have to sign this agreement with them, and we have to use their loan documents. I've had Bob go through and look at what he thinks, and these are all his thoughts on the documents. And I'm not going to be able to go through, but so one thing on there is the servicing or the loan documents say that they are to be, the jurisdiction is Sedgwick County. Bob thought it needs to also say Lincoln County. So I've also talked to Network Kansas, and here's what our attorney is saying. He's not really happy with any of this. And of course, their attorneys are thrilled with all this stuff, so I don't see them really making changes. Her thought on this one is, even though it's their money, the e-community funds is their money that we can use to help with our projects ultimately. And so their money is located in Sedgwick County. So therefore, that's why it's only Sedgwick County District. This is their money. I don't know what all else is in there. I think there's a lot of things where Network Kansas can decide that they can terminate things and change things, but we can't necessarily do the same. Their thought is if there actually is, we've already signed an agreement on the e-community program that we're going to participate in it. It was more broad about the whole program, not necessarily specific to loans like this servicing agreement is, but their thought is no, if you ever want to back out or not participate anymore, you have an out. There's that you can do that if you want to. They are, I think Bob's issue is an underlying problem is that they are so comprehensive, all of these loan documents, that, they've just pulled anything and everything, mashed it into one where it's almost so comprehensive, but every loan there's always something unique about it. There's always something that's just a little, you just can't have one standard thing that just fits every situation. So his thought, as an overarching comment, is by making it such a huge document that encompasses everything, you're actually potentially exposing yourself more, because there's going to be a situation where whatever just doesn't apply somehow. The guarantee document, the way it's written, Bob thinks it basically says whoever's guaranteeing the loan, it's not just guaranteeing this loan, but any other future loan that the borrower might be applying for that maybe the guarantor doesn't necessarily know about. It's kind of any and every loan that this person will ever do in the future. So that's, Bob thought that was way too strict and harsh to require that. When I talked to Network Kansas about it, they said, we don't really review, we don't read it that way. So, we read it as to this loan,
It's
whatever
loan
is
specific.
effective for this specific loan.
This
Whereas
is-
Bob reads it as the guarantor is waiving notice of incurring indebtedness, let's see, in future loans, all sorts of stuff there. So anyway.
So have we used their documents before?
No, we've always been able to use our documents.
So is this something new that they're coming up with?
Yes, this is something that they're requiring everybody to do. This kind of is something
They
they're
done it
changing.
before, but now they
Right,
are.
but now to make it easier on them to monitor all their loans that they have through 60 some odd communities across the state, they're requiring all of us to do this.
Have you had a chance to talk to any of the other communities, and do you know some of the leaders there
No, I
that you
haven't,
could ask?
because honestly, when I talked to Network Kansas about it, she was like, most everybody just signed it.
Everybody's okay.
Just-
Yeah.
She said there was a few communities where maybe the attorney just kind of, asked a question or two, but for the most part, they.
So you think
And
this new thing,
Kind of Bob's
Well,
thing.
Oh, here's a copy of what we've got there.
the paperwork is gonna be prohibitive to the person applying for the loan? Like too
Well,
much going
my
out?
concern is, if I'm the one who's sort of the front line for all this stuff, and I can barely read the first paragraph,
Right.
how am I supposed to explain this to somebody applying for a loan? And
Tell you what
so,
happens. Nobody
They
reads
won't
it.
read it either.
Nobody reads it.
Yeah, I
And-
know.
I shove papers across my desk, and when they sign in papers, we're taking a lien on everything they own. Ever gonna own, their kids are ever gonna own, their parents are ever gonna own, and they just sign it. They sign it at the bottom. They barely read the name and address. And they're gonna sign it. And when it goes south, what happens is they're broke. They ain't got no money. There's no sense spending hundreds of thousands pursuing somebody that don't have any money. So the person that holds the loan goes, fine, we'll take back what we can take back and let them go. If they've got money, they go to a different bank, borrow the money, pay you off to get them out of your hair, and then you're out of it anyway. And that's what happens. Nobody reads any of that. How many people here, did you read your loan papers when you borrowed the money to buy the better?
No. I took it in that Craig was honest with me.
There you go. So,
He's not gonna hurt me.
Did you collateralize everything on?
So if you don't make your Baylor payment, I can go on your farm and take every piece of equipment you have ever financed with AGCO Finance.
Oh, well, then that's.
Every one of them would, and you can go, if you got one payment left on that windrower, and if you paid off, but you don't make your Baylor payment, I can go take it off and just keep taking it till I'm happy.
Is that possible for you to be happy?
Really?
But the problem is that people that can't make the payments are broke. And everybody in the loop. So when we repossessed everything from Robinson Farms up there, $2 million worth of equipment. And we're selling off piece by piece by piece. When we get down to the end, I asked the bank, I said, what are you going to do? Not going to do nothing. They're not going to pursue them in court. They're not going to do nothing. They just write it off and go on down the road because even being broke, they can tie it up in court for a couple of years, and the finance company has other things to do, so they just say, fine, where we're at, we just take our whatever, $500,000 hickey, whatever, go on down the road. So, as far as papers, nobody reads them, and it don't matter. Nobody's
Nobody
reading
really
them.
does read them. I mean, unless you really think it's necessary.
They used to be a
Generally,
lot more
people
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when
We
we
didn't have this much to get a loan.
we borrow money down at Citizens Bank. That stack of papers is this high,
don't. Oh,
and you just flip it, and you
Yeah,
just
you
flip
just
it,
sign
and you
it,
just
sign
yeah. Let's do all that.
You know what?
With the red X's,
Well, I want
sign
the money.
please, sign please, sign please.
So So,
But there maybe should be a deal in there for arbitration somewhere so that maybe there can be some mediation or arbitration in the loan process.
well, and there is,
Because
it
they're
is
not
in
gonna
there
move it.
somewhere, I mean, what that whole process is, and we can, there is some, in terms of like, what we can get paid for doing the admin work for their loan through whatever arbitration or trying to collect or something like that. So it's all in there, but don't ask me to explain what that says.
I guess the question you have to ask yourself is you're losing a lot of sleep over this, and Bob's put a lot of time and effort into it, as we can see. And 60 other communities are going to either
Okay.
sign it or not sign it. And when you talk to them, are they going to change all this to
No.
appease us?
No.
Well, that's my point.
So, I mean, we're
we
either
can lose
stuck with
sleep, or
it-
else we can just get out of the program. I mean, is that the
That's right.
option?
Yeah. I mean, I did ask her, I said, like, so what happens if my board decides not to sign this? I mean, does that mean we're just
But you were
pretty much,
stupid.
are we done? And she kind of was like, no, we'll figure something out, but I don't know what the figure something out would be.
So it's not a you do or you're out.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we could still be an e-community program, but I don't know if we can provide any loans.
So
right
what
there.
does Bob think we should
Well,
approve it or
Bob's-
not?
Bob is not, he doesn't think we should. He thinks this is a losing proposition for the foundation because of the record-keeping requirements, the detailed responsibilities, the modest income for doing the work, which is stated we would do in here to basically admin these loans. If the board wants to go ahead anyway, he suggests that each board member first sign a notarized statement that we have read every single word of the servicing agreement and understand it, and that we make sure whoever we're providing a loan to has read every single word and understands what they're doing.
Well, maybe
Which seems a bit, I mean, I just feel like there's sort of these loan documents seem a bit extreme, but that seems a bit extreme too.
how
I do
many
think
of
that-
these have we done? Quite a few.
Well, one, yes.
It's not that we're hurting for the money to get from them. So do you deal with it or not?
But again, with that loan document, this hasn't been in place before, so this may be the appointed lawyers from that group may be tasked with, here, this is what we want to send out to the e-community partners that we have. And with that then, and you said that you spoke to that lady and she said, well, no, but, so again, that may be a mitigating piece that if our local attorney is saying don't sign that, then maybe we're not going to sign it because this, and if he's
But
already
it's on
drafted
a
a
yearly
letter.
basis too. You have to re-sign every year.
Yes.
So what is
That's
it?
what I thought.
I'd say this is just a mitigating tool right now, is my understanding. I'm not signing it at this point until our local lawyer that represents us, I'm not signing anything. And then so I'm not, and if 3 other board members are in agreement with me, then the other 3, for a total of 7, then that takes precedence on our board, so we're not going to pass this or we're not going to fall in with this. But again, is this just a mitigating tool that we can send back, or you could send back, that our lawyer said this needs to be addressed, and they may be taking that information from those other 59 e-communities and going back to their lawyer and saying, okay, this is the fallout we got from this. And they're going, oh, well, we're not as smart as we thought we were.
Yeah, no, I think,
And again, a mitigating tool, but
I have a feeling that every other e-community has signed this. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but when they first did this, they said we would like everybody to have this in the servicing agreement and everything back by like the end of September. And I've been just being a true professional and avoiding this as long as I can. Like, I just haven't wanted to deal with it. So my impression is that probably everybody else has by now, and if they haven't, there's just 1 or 2 stragglers that
Or a
they are.
straggler?
We are definitely a straggler, and that they are not changing the documents. They are the way they are. She did say, like, well, I can talk to our attorneys about it, but I'm pretty sure that's just a.
I just wonder if they differ very much from, just like Craig says, ACO's paperwork or Slingard Bank's paperwork, or
Probably mostly the same.
I would almost bet it's.
I would guess most of the other e-communities had one meeting, and they said, hey, we gotta sign this if we're gonna keep loaning e-community money, and they all said, okay, sign it.
I would.
Just like we just did on the,
And had Bob not sent us 2 pages of problems, we probably would have signed it.
Well, did they even have their lawyers look at it?
Yeah.
Probably
Probably not.
I mean, I do think that Network Kansas, they are a very good partner. I don't think they're doing anything here to try, that's gonna try and harm
Trap.
a relationship here. I mean, because they depend on us, all these e-communities, to kind of do their work in terms of providing these loans up there. So, I mean, I don't think that they're doing anything that would purposely try and.
Oh, I can't really see that if, without reading it, I wouldn't know what I was reading anyway, either on one of my loans or that one.
well, if I really wanted to read it, I'd have to take it to a lawyer.
Decipher it.
Yeah,
Interpret
so what
this.
does this actually mean where it says therefore and here? And-
Therefore,
I've never taken a loan in 30 years to a lawyer to have him read that line.
Because that's why you have a legal profession. So that this lawyer can disagree with this lawyer,
So
and
they
both of
both-
them can charge
So
somebody
they
money.
both have a job.
That's right, because if they all agreed on everything, there wouldn't be any lawyers.
cutthroat.
And the only time that fine print probably comes into place is if that person, that individual or that entity does go broke. Then lawyers are gonna fight it out anyway. And
How much of that e-community money, don't we get some to spend like for our meetings and stuff? Is that gonna go away if we don't sign it?
I don't know. I don't.
That's the biggest benefit of the whole
Yes,
deal
I
that I've
agree. I
seen.
mean, we've got plenty
Well,
of
we
other
can
loans.
sign it and just shelve it.
But we
And
got
when
another
you-
year, we'll sign it
When you use all the
again.
rest of the money that you've got available to you, you go, okay, let's go to the community if we absolutely have to for the last loan, but we haven't made a loan all year. So you haven't tapped into any of the other funds we have available at all.
But we have to, every year, we have to redo it.
Yeah, you just sign it again.
That's the biggest
So you can-
benefit I see, is the money we get to use for meetings and.
The problem I see is if you don't participate, then that scale that they had where you have available funds, they start pulling that away from you, which don't mean nothing if you never need them. It just means something if you need them at some point in
Or
time.
one of them.
So we can sit on this another month. I can ask her, like, so if they just decide not to do this, you said we could work something out. What would that work something out start to look like?
And everybody go home and read your emails.
Go through, read it.
Take your coffee with you,
We can,
take you an hour,
you know, really
and you'll be confused when you're done.
the deadline on this is if and when we have a loan. And that's when we have to have an answer on this. There are a couple potential loan applications out there. We do have a very healthy amount of loan money available in our revolving loan fund right now, so I don't feel like we're hurting, you know, we're desperate, where we're going to have these loan funds available. But like Craig said, they really like it, you know, when we kind of pull from their funds, because now we score a little higher, so now we've got more money to do more of these trainings and stuff like that. So,
So did you say Dan Stephan was going to be here tomorrow?
Today.
today, this afternoon.
So can he take their papers and take them to somebody else at the state, say,
Is this,
or, yeah, let the state spend some money analyzing the other part of the state's legal documents.
be a good idea to run it at him. Let's take an extra copy along today. So here, go home and analyze
Who
this
is
for
this
us.
guy?
Dan said he's with the Department of Commerce. I would be willing to bet what he'll.
Yeah.
I would just feel like,
What are you being stupid for?
like, you gotta do
Sign
it.
it.
You gotta do it. Yeah.
Well, it's a precarious situation because you got some advice from Bob, and his advice was this. And we say, ignore it, and we sign it, and then we get in trouble, and we go to Bob and say, here's what happened, Bob. He said, I told you not to sign it. Okay,
That's
so
fine,
until we
too.
get something
Good
figured out,
point, Chad.
Let's just put it on hold.
I think, let's wait a month.
Right. And everybody read.
You would think there'd
It's your
be a
late night reading.
standard loan document package they could have just copied from somebody.
And maybe it is. Nobody read it.
Yeah.
Bob feels
Compared
like,
to,
Bob feels like what they did is they took this standard piece, or they had a million different examples in front of them. They pulled here and here and here and here, and they pushed it all together. And that's how he says it reads.
But one thing about it, in my bank or the ones downtown or Craig, if you don't sign that, whether you've read it or not, he won't make you the loan, I don't think.
Yeah, they won't loan you the money unless you sign it. So if you want the money, you sign the paperwork.
Yeah, regardless.
And if we were over a barrel right now and had a big
Regardless
loan
of
and we
what
needed it,
Yeah,
then
we'd
we
be
might
signing it.
have to sign it.
We haven't used any money yet, so.
All right, well, I'll see what it would look like if what they say is, so if we don't do this, what happens?
Did you send them Bob's comments?
I did not.
I would.
I
I just
sort
smile
of-
and say, hey, here's what
I
our
kind
lawyer
of
says.
read the bits and pieces from it because I thought, I don't know if I want to go there quite yet in terms of, I feel like we still need to have a good relationship.
I would ask-
Grins and giggles.
I would ask you some more of your questions before you send them Bob's thoughts.
Yeah. All right.
Don't send them the thoughts yet.
No, I felt like hold on to that piece for a little while. Cause that kind of problem. Okay. Under business updates, so Sylvan Grove CDBG housing grant is well underway, and I probably believe some work is going to be getting started here. When they applied for the grant, we had committed $5,000 from our Hearts, Hands, Homes fund, and they haven't really needed it yet. But now that the actual work is starting, they're going to be starting to pull some of these funds. So I guess I'd like a motion that I can go ahead and pull that money from. This is the Hearts, Hands, Homes fund is at Wilson State Bank. Right now, there's $10,544 in there. So if we pull $5,000 out, that leaves a little more than $5,000 available, which is the one community left that we were going to transfer money. Or Beverly is the one community that hasn't received their allotment, I guess you could say, of this fund, which we were trying to do to eliminate it. So.
Are you going to disperse the 5,000 all at once, or you?
Yeah.
Sylvan?
Yeah. I mean, that just makes it easy. So.
Yeah.
But I guess I would like a motion that you're okay with me doing that.
I submitted to take the $5,000 from the Heart, Hands, and Health fund that we had designated for the Sylvan CDBG grant.
Second.
Rhonda made a motion to approve sending the $5,000 from the Hearts, Hands, and Homes funds to the Sylvan Groves CDBG housing. And
Correct.
David second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I already talked a little bit about the partnership with the chamber and how that's just kind of going to be on hold until they figure their or reapply for their IRS status. The Active Living Master Plan project. So, quick refresher, strategic viewing process. There's been a group that's been focusing on developing this Active Living Master Plan, which would be sidewalk improvements in Sylvan and some trail loop around the high school and down to their old railroad line. Here in Lincoln, sidewalk improvements, a loop around City Park, new bathrooms in the park, some bridge repairs, or not really repairs, reworking the bridges at the park to help with the flooding factor down there. And then also developing a park at the Saline River Dam south of town. Those are the major projects. This is what the draft master plan looks like. If you guys, I felt like I was already killing too many trees.
Yeah.
So I didn't print everybody a copy. But if you want to kind of take a look at it. Barnard, there was also a portion of a trail development there along the levee. And Barb, we're going to go ahead and leave that in there because the work is already done. So they're not going to do any more work in terms of kind of developing it. But we've got, it's pretty well developed anyway, so we just decided might as well leave it in there. So the funds for this came from both a Dane Hansen grant and a Post Rock Community Foundation grant. The overall project cost is $23,100. We have that money in the bank, but we've got our first invoice for the project since they've kind of got us to that final draft. So we have an invoice of $16,677 for their work. And so I guess I would like approval to go ahead and pay that.
Or are they going to, are they gonna spend that other $6,400 on
Yes.
something yet?
Yeah. What they're billing for is basically the meetings that they've had in developing the draft. But we've had a meeting a week or two ago with the group to approve the draft, and so now what they need to do is finalize it. There was a few little edits. So kind of creating the final document. So they will fully invoice us for the remaining amount in another month or so.
So we're gonna get this from a grant. Is there some kind of matching funds that we have to pay?
Nope, we already have the grant money and we did not have to provide any matching dollars.
Okay.
So the $23,100 total project cost, we already have all that money in the bank sitting there. It's just a matter of
Okay.
spending it.
This is just basically a pass-through.
Yes, yeah.
So it's,
We are serving as the pass-through entity for the strategic doing group, since it doesn't really technically fall well under any one city or county or anything like that, so we're the pass-through for it.
Want a motion for approval to pay them?
Yeah.
I would so move to approve the invoice for Schwab.
Wendell made the motion to approve paying the invoice to Schwab Eaton for $16,677. And Rhonda seconded. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
And so, since you're in the spending mood, I'm going to keep going.
as long as somebody else is doing it.
So the other big project that's been going on is the consultant that's been working on developing historic surveys of downtown Sylvan, downtown Lincoln City Park, and then writing a nomination for the Lincoln Old High School. And this is what the draft nomination for the Old High School looks like, if you want to see exactly what that looks like. So we're at the point of the project where kind of like this, all the draft information has been submitted to the Kansas Historical Society. They're ultimately the ones who, I can provide comment on all this kind of stuff, but they're ultimately the ones that have to approve it and say, yes, this meets our standards for these things. So for the surveys, Brenda Spencer is the consultant. She has gone through and looked at the defined areas of the downtowns that we talked about. She's done research on each of the properties. She's developed descriptions of the properties, taken pictures, and all of that information has been uploaded. The Kansas Historical Society has an online database of all the properties around the state. So all that information has been uploaded. It isn't easy for me to just print all that off. We will get a print off of that, but at this point I didn't take the time to try and print all that stuff off. But it's all been submitted, so the state goes through every single property and looks at it and kind of, yes, we approve information on this property and that property. So again, we're kind of at a point, a milestone where all the drafts have been submitted. And so we have a bill from Brenda Spencer for $16,500 for the project. Her final, I don't know if I brought that in front of me, is going to be, I believe, $24,000 is what the final invoice, or the total project cost is from her is going to be. We will get, I should have thought about my math here. There is going to be a local match in this, so I think what I'm going to do is when the project is totally over, I am going to submit all the documents to the Kansas Historical Society for reimbursement. There's kind of a lot of paperwork that's required, so I think I just want to wait till the very end so we only have to do it once. So we're going to have to kind of float ourselves a little bit here, but ultimately out of the total project cost of $24,000 that she's going to bill for, we have to cover, our portion would be like $6,000 or $7,000 of that. The rest will be covered in
That's what we
by the
have to
grant.
come up with,
Yeah, that would be our,
6 or 7.
yeah. And I can get you a better number on that. I didn't bring that folder in. But the remaining work that needs to be done is finalizing the nomination. She's going to come back and do a final presentation, both Sylvan and Lincoln. I think that's looking about April right now to present all of her findings of the buildings and what she sees. There's a determination for each of those buildings, what buildings are contributing to the historic nature of the district and which ones are not contributing, and also a determination of if the district as a whole is eligible to be listed as a National Register district or not. And so at that point we can kind of decide, based on that determination, if there is a district there, do we want to take it to then the next level of actually designating the downtowns in the National Register, which would open up. My whole goal for this whole thing is to open up funding opportunities for downtown property owners. That's ultimately why I'm encouraging all this stuff, so that we can get to that point where property owners have another tool if they want to fix up their buildings.
So that's where the whole thing is leading up to get it on the National Register.
Right. I mean, there's going to be a decision point. The downtowns of Sylvan and Lincoln, as property owners, as a city, they can decide after this is done, do we want to go to that next level or not? It's not up to me. I wish it was, but it's not. And if Sylvan decides, yes, let's move forward with it, then there's a whole other process. Now we've got to write basically what their route is for the high school. There's going to be a big one of those for the whole downtown, and same with Lincoln, because ultimately it needs to go to the National Park Service for official listing. There's a little bit of a concern right now. Sylvan is on the fence whether there's a district there for National Register. So what we really need to do, the next step, is have a conversation with the Kansas Historical Society to make sure, are there any properties where maybe Brenda has said, I don't think this is contributing, but the state would push it over the edge and say, no, we'll consider it contributing, or they might go the other way. So actually, Lincoln, depending on how you look at the boundaries, is kind of on the fence too. The way you get around that is you change the boundaries, because you have to have at least more than half of the buildings have to be contributing. So if you have a chunk of the downtown that's not contributing, well, you just lop off that part, and now you get your percentage up.
You're not downtown.
So that's where, there's a little bit of a give and take here that happens at the state level in terms of how they look at things. But the last time I talked to Brenda, she was like, well, Sylvan's definitely on the fence, and I think with Lincoln, the west, because we went all the way down to Highway 14, I think that's causing some problems
City
there.
Hall West, maybe, no
That's
question.
right. That's where you're kind of messing with your percentage there. So anyway,
So you need approval for the 16.5.
so yeah.
We already have that money too.
We don't actually have that money. This grant is, we've been awarded, we know we're going to get the grant for it, but we have to be reimbursed for it. So we do not have the money in the bank on this one. But once this whole project is
That's
over,
what I thought.
I can submit the documents for us to be reimbursed for the grant. And like I said, that
Also moved that we pay the 16.5 for the historical grant preservation, historical, whatever you call it.
call it the Kansas Historical Society's Historic Preservation Fund.
Okay. To be paid, so we can go to the next step.
I'll say.
Rhonda made a motion for the approval to pay Spencer Preservation $16,500 for the Kansas Historical Society Preservation. And Craig seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
So this next thing, I'm just kind of throw this out there in terms of. Oops, sorry.
I figured you already seen it.
Providing scholarships to attend some different conferences. These first two, I think everybody knows that with the hemp legislation that's changed, that's opening all sorts of doors for the ag economy, and I honestly feel like I don't really know enough about hemp to be able to get Lincoln County to capitalize on all of this. And so there's two things that I've heard about here recently. The Kansas Hemp Symposium on February 23rd down in Hutchinson. And then there's also the Hemp Academy in DeSoto. And so I just have kind of been wondering, should we be trying to encourage more people in the county to learn more about the hemp industry or not? The Hemp Symposium, it's a one-day thing. It's a $99 registration fee. In the past, when we've approved supporting people going to things, we could either cover a part of the scholarship or provide a scholarship that covers the registration fee, or part of it. In the past, if we have approved it, it's always a reimbursement, so they have to go. That way, if they sign up for it and then bail, we're not stuck paying for their registration fee. They would cover their own travel and food costs or anything, but it might be a way to encourage some people to attend if we think that's important. The Hemp Academy one, that's a $2,000 tuition fee, so that's a little steep. So I'm not necessarily saying we cover that whole thing.
Just for a whole week.
It's a whole week, 8 to 5 school, basically. And I've got some more information on what that is. The academy, it covers fundamentals of growing, harvest, processing for grain, fiber, and oil production. It goes over processing. It goes over industrial and value-added products. It goes over farming from seed to sale, greenhousing, experimental designs, the regulations, the equipment. So it's a week-long course. And there's a video online that I watched, and it actually looks kind of interesting to go through everything that they go through. The hemp symposium, and I think I've got information in your a packet of what that is. But they've got different speakers who are coming, and so I just kind of wanted to throw it out there in terms of is this something we want to try and encourage people to learn more about? I haven't had anybody come to me and say, hey, I want to start growing hemp. What do I need to do? I need a loan. I need to buy some equipment or anything. I've had no interest for me, but I haven't necessarily gone out and sought to see who is interested. I don't know if you guys, what conversation you're hearing out there, or if there is any or not, but I
just got in on the tail end of something down there at Solana the other day, and that guy wasn't too enthralled. It was a Milo symposium, but he said the problem is going to be, and maybe these will clear that up, but where are you going to go with this product?
Well, it shows you in there. You have the place where you sell, where you sell.
Yeah.
And I mean, my assumption, and I've heard bits and pieces, that there's more processors that are going to be in development here.
Is it going to be baled? Have you even looked at it at all, Craig?
Not really. I had a guy in Texas tell me John Deere was going to be down there showing me some equipment. Here's the spring. But I don't know. I've seen the straw board plants come. I mean, the hemp will be a product that will be here, but I think they're going to get slaughtered by the irrigation areas. I think them big farmers in irrigation are going to go in there, and our dry land farming community is going to be sucking in. It's just like biomass. You couldn't put a biomass plant here because if you took every single solitary acre of biomass in Lincoln County, it wouldn't run that plant for a day. So all that stuff that I think, and plus trust the American farmer to blow it to the basement. And in 5 years, what you think?
Overproduce it.
Yeah, like what you think is going to make you money today, it'll be like the biomass business. They're all broke. They're gone. Biodiesel guys are any of them went out. They're all gone. So the American farmers can take the value out of anything and kick it to the basement.
They were talking on KFRM last week, you might have heard it. There's an 80-acre limit
Oh, really?
per farmer,
For
and
him.
he asked how much the seed would be. And he says, oh, it can be upwards of $800 a bag. He said, which constitutes $1 a seed. And I don't have any idea how many seeds you need or anything about it. But he said the cost to get started was going to be substantial. And there is no insurance. And there are crop losses. So he wasn't saying run out and do it. He said make sure you do some
Find your
research
education.
before you.
Can Starseed get that seed?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'll have to ask Jay. I imagine they do, but I'm not. I have every other.
I mean, I don't want to be Debbie Downer or whatever you call it, but
Well, me either.
I'd probably sit back and let it get established a little bit and see where it goes. For one, processing it, it's going to be like canola around here or
Cotton.
anything else. Everything is determined by weight, volume, and how far you are from where it gets processed. And if you're too far away, no matter what you did here, it costs you too much to get it there to get it processed, and you're out. You're sucking wind. And
Yeah,
who's going to build a processing facility close enough to here for it to be
Just
profitable?
like your hatch. Well, I don't know.
Who's our extension office agent now? Is he out of Lloyd? Well, they go to some of them meetings and come back and put on a little meeting in town. Remember, like Crane Bill?
That is in the gallons in the paper.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sandra Wick would be the crop agent. Sandra Wick.
That's the way it would have been done before.
My understanding, this machine that's gonna harvest it is gonna cut it high and cut it low at the same time, so you'll cut the head off. It'll go in a hopper for oil production, you'll cut the stalk off, it'll go behind it and be baled. And if it's like that cotton round baling gizmo, $750,000 a pop, how many Lincoln County farmers are gonna jump in there?
Where's your entrepreneurial spirit?
I'll say, would you? I'd say, would you buy one? Could you buy one?
So anyhow, if somebody wants to go to the one-day deal, it's a $99.
Seems like a safer.
It's a
Yeah.
that's a safe way to start.
I am planning to go to it just because I feel like I don't know anything, so I
Take
feel like
Jim
it would
with
be.
you or somebody.
Alright. Well, I thought, should I open it up to others? Do any of you guys want to go, or should I just kind of put it out there and
There's
if
three
we
farmers
have
sitting
3
here.
or 4,
Hello?
There they are.
1, 2, 3.
You bet you.
or if we, I don't know if you want to put a limit on it in terms of if
Well, it's a
we.
Saturday.
It is a Saturday, yeah.
There you go.
That's your
Wendell.
day off, baby.
Yeah.
You can go.
Just
So-
have to, let's see, does K-State play that game? Are we going to K-State or are we going?
It's at Hutchinson, and it's on a Saturday. What time of the day is it?
I think it's an all-day thing.
9 to 3
DeSoto.
or
8:30 to 5.
probably 4?
4:50 is closing remarks. So I just thought I would throw it out there, see if we want to.
So the one in DeSoto is the one that's a week.
Yeah.
$2 grand.
And that's the.
That must get into the harvesting.
I have money to make now.
Maybe, if we find out something at the one-day one, it seems like, we do need to.
Can your air seeder seed hemp?
I suppose it'd be like alfalfa seed.
How big of a
Be
seed
pretty
is
small.
a hemp seed?
Pretty small.
Is it pretty small?
Yeah, it would be like.
It may not be small as alfalfa seed.
Be like a tin head, I would think.
I don't have any prior experience. That's something to post that
Hey, it's
down.
growing all over. Don't you see it when you're farming? Not the hemp,
I don't farm.
but the quail love it, they say. The seed. Not the hemp. Maybe they do. Move on.
That is
Well,
seed
so-
is part of the hemp.
So how do you guys feel about, do we want to provide a scholarship to this symposium or not?
I think it'd be good for somebody to go.
Yeah, I do too.
Somebody.
Somebody that knows about farming.
So if I put it out there that, hey, we'd like to help support a couple people to go, and will we cover the registration fee as long as they
So
travel
this is the
down
one,
there?
one-day one?
This is the one-day
Yeah.
one. Or do we want to just do half of it, or, what do you guys think?
I put it out there, give somebody an opportunity.
Get a couple to go and pay their tuition.
Out
Pay
there.
their 99.
Build it.
Okay.
They'll probably serve dinner there that day.
Wonder what it's
Your
gonna have.
chip mail or whatever it is and put it out there and say, anybody interested or
Or just say lunch, so I don't know if that means it's provided or not.
More than likely is they want to keep you there.
Yeah.
They don't want you to leave for the, and then we can go home.
So, how many is a couple? 2 or 3?
Yeah.
you and a friend.
Yeah, I would like to go just for my own, see if there's anything there that I need to know. And then a couple more, I guess. The Big Roll Brainstorm in Winsburg, this is through the Kansas Sampler Foundation. 2 years ago, they hold this every other year. We did provide a scholarship for people to attend. It's very positive, a lot of just great people from across the state who are talking about ideas and how to improve rural, and lots of different great networking. They cover I think I put in there kind of some of the topics that they cover. It's a lot of mini sessions where you kind of like, okay, everybody who wants to talk about, what do they have here? Healthcare or fitness center or marketing or microbrewery, they have kind of these tables a lot of times, and you just get people and you kind of talk, you learn from each other. It's kind of an anti-conference in that they don't have big speakers that talk about everything. It's a way to network, get people together on this issue, learn from each other, and this issue, learn from each other. So I just want to know if you'd be interested in kind of putting that out there again, seeing last time I think 5 people went, and I believe we covered their registration fee. They have to cover their travel and food and take the time, so I don't know if that's something you want to do again.
I'd make a motion to, they could do some sort of thing similar, 3 to 5 people or something.
Okay.
I'd say.
So Craig, you made a motion for 3 to 5 people on the big rural brainstorm in Lynchburg. Glenn will second the motion. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
The last one here, it's the Dane Hansen Foundation Forum on March 5th. I am not able to go to it because that's our Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge that day. But I do know at least one of those speakers, and he's really good. Talks about rural statistics and rural population and how to look at some of those things. Where do you find the positive numbers and things? He was just a very good speaker. I'm not able to go. There's no registration fee. They do ask that you RSVP, so I guess I just wanted to throw out there to see if any of you would want to
It's
attend.
interesting, but
Yeah.
I'm busy too.
Yeah, that's okay. You can't go because you're telling me. And you can't
Tell
go
me
either,
to tape
actually,
it.
now that I think about it. It's really targeted towards community foundation board members and economic development officials. So that's kind of their focus on
Tell
it.
me to tape it.
I'm kind of bummed that I can't go. I've gone the last couple of years and I've always thought they've done an excellent job.
Now 13 ways to kill your community.
We probably got 11 of them figured out. Have to figure out what the last 2 are.
So if you're interested in going that, if you can, great. Or if you know anybody else who would be willing to go, I think it would just be an interesting meeting to attend. The next one, the Downtown Design Assistance Program grant. So last summer, the interns provided design assistance for 8 projects. We have grant funding for 5 of them. The Sylvan Senior Center was one of the projects that we allocated grant funding towards. They have since bought a different, they've changed the plan. They've bought another building in downtown Sylvan, and they're focusing on fixing that up. So they really have no plans of putting any money into the building that they're in right now. And that's because the adjacent building has a major roof issue. I mean, there's just...
No, it's part of the building.
Well, it's part of the building, yes.
It is the building.
So, anyway, my thought was, that grant does not transfer to a new building because the whole idea was to get the design assistance and implement that design. And the senior center, they know, they're aware of that. So I guess I thought, well, the Laboratories received design assistance, but they were not awarded a grant. So I wanted to get your thoughts in terms of, should we reallocate that to them if they decide to follow through with the plans, or how you guys think about that?
Somebody's wanting to do something.
Yeah, I think they are. I know I believe they talked to Josh Board here recently about doing some work, so I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think it's a good idea. They were one of the ones
Yeah.
that participated.
Does everybody agree with
Need a
that?
motion for that?
Sure.
I'll make a motion that we transfer the grant that was awarded to the Senior Citizens Center in Sylvan to the Liberty Acre.
Second.
Who got it? Greg made a motion to redirect or transfer the downtown assistant grant money from the Sylvan Senior Center to Lambert to Priories.
Robert, your aviaries.
Yeah,
The B place.
pronounce that for me. And David seconded the motion. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
But you don't know, you haven't talked to them, or do you know that they're,
Collaboratives?
yeah.
I've had a couple emails back and forth with Sandy, and I asked her, like, would you guys be interested in the grant if we reallocated? And she was kind of, well, you know, what are the rules again? And so we've kind of had a few emails back and forth on it. But I just thought, well, if we had it budgeted, and they're willing to do it, I thought I better try. The next thing here, industrial park activities. Two things that came up. There's been some concern about the condition of Industrial Drive. It's a gravel street in town, and with BC Diesel, they've done a great business. That means there's a lot of really heavy truck traffic on that road, and it's just the conditions deteriorated. There was some conversation at the city council meeting the other night in terms of repairing it. I believe, I wasn't at the meeting, but I believe the city is going to grade it more frequently. I think they have put down some rock. I think they would like to put down some more rock. I believe that the question has been, would economic development be willing to help with any of that? I wasn't
We're going to
Sure.
talk to the Post Rock Community Foundation for a grant.
That's a good idea.
She was just here.
Yeah, actually, that might be a great way to handle it. So, yes, I was asked, is there anything economic development would be willing to do? We've got good businesses along that drive, and here, you know, it's not a great, I guess.
No, it's too rough. There's big rocks. You can't blade the big rocks without making it worse. So it needs something else on top of it. I bladed it myself for them before when the BC
Why
Diesel.
isn't this a city thing?
It's in the city property.
I
It's
think
city
this-
street.
But that's what I mean, why isn't this the city's?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I think what I heard out of the meeting the other night is that nobody had really talked to the city saying it was a problem, so they didn't know. But now that they know, they're going to do a better job of kind of being on top of it.
The city just made a dump in January out there, 4 loads and 8 loads in July.
Okay.
That came out at the meeting the other night.
Okay.
So
But what?
they did 8 loads of rock out there last July and 4 loads last month. And it's not enough because of the weight of those vehicles. And when they come in Bobdale, you get no control.
Well,
So it's tough.
The trucks coming and going there aren't loaded with 80,000
No, they're not
pounds. They're
loaded.
empty. Or they don't even have a trailer. It's not
That's
heavy.
what she said, Bobtail.
It's not heavy loads.
Right. Most of them don't even have trailers on them.
Right.
But it still is more traffic than that road's ever seen.
There's more traffic there than there is out of their multi-million-dollar airport going nowhere.
So the way they left it at the city council meeting was the city's going to continue to dump some rock out there. Now, how much and how often, I'm not sure because their budget's tight too. But Jess agreed to keep an eye on it,
Okay.
so maybe more frequently.
So was there any conversation about, because what I had heard is that economic development was going to be asked to, or see if economic development would pitch in.
Nobody said that, but I
Okay.
mean, Doug and Miranda were there to present the challenges, and I guess Doug's done a lot of work on that road too. And
Yeah.
that is what it is. They didn't allocate more money, but they did say they'd be more alert.
Okay.
I'm gonna call Solana APAC and ask them how much hot mix is. Just for curiosity.
Canopolis sand and gravel.
Well,
They've got hot mix too, I think, or cold mix, one or two.
I talked to Ricky White and he said to call APAC and Solana for the hot mix and they can give you some idea.
What is that, a quarter mile?
1,000 feet, something like that.
Or you're not talking clear to,
From the highway to North Street,
oh,
The whole way.
the whole length.
I thought it was longer than that.
No,
It's not.
it's about a quarter.
About a block.
Well,
Not
the football
quite.
field's 300 feet,
Yeah,
and that's probably
Yeah,
about 3 or 4 of those,
you're
and that's
right.
1,000 feet.
Yes.
It's 120 feet between the highline poles.
Gosh, that would have been my suggestion.
about 1,000.
Is to pave it.
Well, you gotta get you a good base.
Well, it's a solid
It
base.
should be getting started with all the
It
rock.
should.
With all the rock that's been pounded in.
Yeah.
well, that actually kind of gets into the next thing here with US Tower. We've got a meeting this afternoon with US Tower, myself, the city, and the North Central Regional Planning Commission. They're talking about expansion again, which in terms of Industrial Drive, they're going to be opening up an entrance onto Industrial Drive. So they're going to have some more traffic on that street too. But with what they're talking about is kind of what they were talking about a couple years ago, expanding off to the west, expanding off to the north, and then expanding off to the east. Right now the building is an L shape, and so they would actually, the void of that L, they would close in, so it would be a big rectangle plus an expansion off to the west. But to do all that, there's utility work that needs to be done. The water line needs to be relocated. Some power poles need to be relocated. And the transformers that are out there need to be, instead of pole mounted, there needs to be a pad mounted one. So there's costs associated with all that. So what I've been trying to figure out is if there's a CDBG program that the city can apply for to cover some of those costs. US Tower would be responsible for some of those costs as well. But we'll see. That meeting's this afternoon at 1:30.
Well, if the city's involved, you can still go back to the Post Rock Community Foundation for part of that. Possibly.
Possibly, yeah. I don't know. Yeah. So I'll be curious to see how the meeting goes today. Just in terms of the timeline, CDBG is a very paperwork intensive process. And I've kind of thought, well, if we're applying for CDBG for the utility work, is there any way we can just put some of this road infrastructure so we can get even more grant money to fix that? But I also feel like that just might be making a complicated conversation even more complicated or drag it out even longer. So we'll see how the meeting goes today. So anyway, that's what's going on there. I'll know more by the end of the day on how much of this is going to work or not work. So I guess that's for that. The Prairie Land Game Birds, just to let you guys know, so they started their expansion last spring, where they were building an incubator building. Because up to now, they've always been buying their chicks from a place in Wisconsin, I think. So now the idea is they're having their own hatchery. They're going to have their own eggs, hatching chicks, and then not only can they use those for their own needs, but they can sell it to other people. So that expansion is getting close to done. The building's done. The incubators are in. The flashing equipment is, I think, the last big thing that needs to come, and that gets here the first part of March is the plan. And then they'll be ready to get started
Business forever.
growing.
Didn't we help them with $10,000 on that project?
Not from our funds, but yes, we worked with them to get them a Jumpstart Kansas
Yeah.
grant through
Yeah,
Department of
there
Commerce.
was a grant associated.
Yeah, and it was for 10,000. Yeah, and they said that was, I can't believe it, that was the easiest money in the world. It sounds like to get. So the application process was pretty straightforward. They had to go through an interview. They got that check way back in, I think he said July from the Department of Commerce, and there wasn't a whole lot of red tape or anything associated with it. It was pretty smooth, so that worked out pretty well.
So who in Lincoln's selling the quail eggs? There's an ad running on Facebook. Some guy has a picture of an egg box with quail eggs.
It's Heidi, out there where Kerry Jackson's brother lived.
Down at the old church,
The old church
south of
house.
Vesper.
Alan?
Yeah, who is that? Gosh,
Does she have poodles?
Selling them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's for you can incubate it.
Yeah, you could either,
Yeah.
I guess, cook them if you want to eat a little bitty egg, but, or incubate them, I guess. I saw that and I thought, might be more opportunity there for some things.
I'll stop there. I was going to bring up something else, but you guys are troopers. I'll save that for another one. We don't have an executive session today. I thought we were going to, but possibly we'll see how things go here next month. In terms of my schedule, the 22nd, I'll be out most of that day for meeting in Manhattan. I'm going to go to the Ethics Symposium. The North Central Kansas Economic Development Roundtable coming up on the 26th. March 5th is the Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge. And on March 15th and 18th, that's a Friday and a Monday, I'm planning on taking a vacation day. So, going to Savannah. My mom is
Where?
Savannah, Georgia.
Oh,
My mom and
I
sister.
thought you said Havana.
That's what I thought. You go get
Go check that hip out.
Get some hemp seed.
Hey, I'm dedicated to learning more.
St. Patrick's Day, you all come down there.
Check out this.
Oh,
Savannah.
yes, that's right.
weekend.
I didn't even
That's
think
a lot
about
of fun.
that.
Been
Our
there.
next meeting, the 13th of March,
Yeah.
the 2nd.
Would there be a, I was wondering about getting could I have a copy of that thing on the high school?
Yes, I would like one too.
Yes.
Spencer,
The
Spencer lady. That,
nomination? This-
Yeah, the history and the,
Yes.
yeah, that.
Yeah, yes.
I'd
This
like
is
to
a
read
draft,
that.
so I doubt there'll be too many changes to it.
Well, I just
But-
want to read it from home.
me too.
Okay.
I would
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
How hard
And
is
then
it to email it?
Not hard at all.
one. That's fine too.
Yeah.
That project that we approved, 16,000, the sidewalk. Okay, so now we're all covered and we're ready
That's
to
right.
try to find the money to build the sidewalk, right?
That's
That's
right.
just originally to get us prepared to
Right.
present that for,
Right.
okay,
The problem with all these projects has kind of been, we know what we want for the idea, but we still can't apply for a grant because we don't know what
Okay.
the cost estimate is or
gotcha.
so the idea with each one of these projects, they're at a point where we can pull that piece out and put it into a grant application.
They all had a cost estimate, didn't they?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
Yes.
saw them somewhere.
yeah, there's a lot of money in there.
Yeah.
Jen already knows what Sylvan's is 700,000 for
That's
the
100,000
trails.
put in it, set it
And
up.
it's
So
a
is it to the point
KD
now where
it's a
we're ready to
KDOT.
Well, it will be
pursue
in the
a-
next month or so. We'll have this master plan done. The city councils are going to need to adopt
No, you
the
can't even
master
take a
plan.
crap.
We
because-
adopted ours.
Okay, because that will be a key step in terms of some of these grants. Do you have, has the city council adopted a master plan kind of thing? So we can say, yes, we have. So that'll give points there. But Schwab Eaton, they've been involved with, Lloyd's been getting a lot of money for sidewalks and trails and all sorts of, and they've been involved in that. So they're gonna, part of this that's actually not in here right now is a whole funding component to it. For each of these projects, where are the likely grant opportunities for?
So Schwab Eaton will help.
I think they're gonna identify it, but then, you know, there's a lot more work here potentially for them. With these sidewalk stuff, there's a safe route.
20%.
Here's my catch. You got a $70,000 bathroom
South side.
that's a pre-engineered, dropped-in-place bathroom, but they charge you 20% of that for engineering.
The
So I think
sidewalk,
that's like me putting a cup here and then charging you the engineer sitting there.
and they
Well, there's
20% addition on the sidewalk, under $54,000.
Yeah.
Which we
Yeah.
need, you can't
Right.
approve it
I'll
without
show
it.
you here.
Right.
They got some good work.
KDOT
if we
has
get it.
some
looks
grants
nice.
that you can get, and that's one of the ones that they're looking at in Sylvan. And like I said, it's between $600,000 and $700,000 for sidewalks and the trails and whatever. And we'd have to come up with up to 20% of that.
Yeah. Beloit, what they said the other day when we had our meeting, tell me, but Beloit, they've had 3 safe routes to schools grants now, which totals about $1 million worth of grants that they've gotten for all those sidewalks they've been moving around. So, I mean, we had a long conversation about what's the best way to go about doing this, you know, and so I think it's possible, and I think they're great resources to help us through that, and I think they're willing because there's money for them. Because they get admin, you know, you apply for a safe routes to school. We've got the preliminary stuff to get us the grant, but once we're awarded the grant, now they do the engineering, and you can charge that to the grant, and, you know, so they're...
So if you tack on a safe route to schools, do you get bumped up in a few more points to possibly getting some more? Because I noticed it dead ends at the park. There's nothing cutting across
Right.
to the school.
Right, and that would be the idea is, one is,
Quiet.
there's some old limestone, you know, the condition of the sidewalk between here and the park in spots isn't the greatest, so you get a good line to there, but then you get a new one that goes to the school. And then that gets part of the loop. You've got about maybe 30% of that loop that's been built. So then you can apply for another grant through another organization to try and get that other, say, 2/3 of that built. And it'll look good because you've already got part of it there. So now you're completing a trail, so that kind of would help you get to that one. So there's kind of a whole system and process for how you align yourself with all these things. And they seem pretty positive that we would have some good chances with this. So I think it's just a matter of how do we work with the city councils to get all this
They
stuff.
cautioned us on chopping it into smaller sections because we're all sitting there going, and they say, well, but every time you start and restart this, there's another like $50,000, oh, let's think about it again fee. So he said, don't break it into more than like 3 components. You just got to kind of get to where you just don't look at the money part of it, and you go, you know, you just got to play the game. So it's kind of frustrating.
So that's all I got. You guys
Okay.
got anything else?
And that's crossed my mind, of course, up there in the north end of town. There wasn't any sidewalks for Dollar General, was there?
No.
No, not in this.
But I see a lot of foot traffic going
Yes.
over there.
Down the highway. And,
Yeah, that would probably be.
Seems to be.
Yeah.
A lot of people walk over there. So anyhow.
It'd be safer if from Lincoln Farm to my place, we put Craig and
yeah, could you
they
put
walk over.
you put me a sidewalk?
Crossing guard.
Need a bridge?
By the bridge would be nice because I have to worry about Thompson falling. Go down the-
Yeah, but you'd have to crawl all